Hi, I'm Joe, and this is a short tutorial for an After Effects script, Textify. So, why Textify? Despite the many other text animator scripts, why use this? Textify is a versatile script UI panel that is designed to speed up your workflow. It's lightweight, meaning performance issues are not affected by the script. It's easy to use. If you're not a motion designer, maybe you're a graphic designer or artist that needs a tool for quick and easy animations without having to learn the native text animator, which for beginners isn't the easiest, and with all the properties it can be rather confusing. And finally, it's actually fun, tweaking sliders, adding properties, randomizing, experimenting with all sorts of different ideas. With this modular tool, it just makes the whole process much more enjoyable with an outcome just as desirable. Please note that Textify is not designed to replace the text animator. However, it is a tool to control them. With all that said, let's get into the tutorial. Once you've installed the script, click Window and select Textify. First of all, here's a basic overview of the user interface. The button on the top left corner textifies the layer and adds all the required expressions and animators before you can add and adjust properties. The next button next to it untextifies the layer, basically removes all those expressions that you added, and removes all of the properties that you also added. The button after that is very important. It is the update button. Because the script cannot determine what layer is selected without interaction with the script, every time you select a text layer, you must click this button to let the script detect your selected layer. If this is slightly confusing, I'll get into more of this later. The trash button deletes selected properties. This button here with the X and the square deletes everything in the current tab. This list view right here is where all the properties are displayed. Usually you would have to twirl down the animator, twirl down a couple more in order to view the properties on a native animator. But that's not the case in Textify. The list has two tabs, one for the in animations and one for the out animations. Below here are two drop-downs, one for animating text when it comes in, and another one for animating text when it exits the screen. As you can see, if I click on one of them, they have a bunch of different properties in order to add, and a bunch of different properties here as well for the out animator. On the right, the top drop-down determines what the animation is based on, whether it is characters, words, or lines. This drop-down affects the layer anchor, whether it is line, words, or characters. The direction is obvious. It determines the direction of the animation, whether it is coming from left to right or right to left. The extra button is a list of different extra features that Textify incorporates. We will look into this more in the future. The random button chooses a combination of properties with random values and adds them to the current tab on the left. The mirror button transfers all the properties in the in to the out, or everything in the out to the in. Animating text in Textify is a very simple process. All you have to do is select the layer, click Textify. Just like that, a bunch of expressions, properties, and animators are added to this layer. You can see on the left in the effects controls, you get three sliders: offset, speed, and bounce. These are used to control the basis of the animation. After you see these three properties, you select this button, which is the drop down, and select any property you wish to animate in. For example, I wish to animate the position. On the left, you can see a new property, position in, is added. And over here, there's also a new property, position. Note that if I click on the out button, it won't be there because that property only applies for the in animation. Adjust this 3D point slider anyhow you like. Let's say I want to move it down. And just like that, you can see I have a really basic animation that goes up. Select it, and I can add another one. Let's say scale, and I can adjust the value to 0, 0. It's not very obvious, but it actually scales from a very small value back to the original value. I can add a rotation value. Adjust the value, and just like that, it animates. Now that I have this very simple animation, let's try to adjust some values up here. So what does offset means? If you look closely, each text animates at a delayed value. This text goes first, this character goes next, this one goes next, and so on. The spacing between each character, or the delay, is adjusted here. So let's say I have a lower offset, let's say 0.4. What this does is that the spacing between each character animating on is less, which means they all animate closely at once, just like that. On the other hand, if I increase this to, let's say, 5, then obviously the spacing between each character is very large. This goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and that just results in a very choppy animation. I'm going to leave that at 1. The speed determines the duration of the text animation. So right now, this animation ends at around 1 second. If I increase the speed, or let's say decrease the speed to 4, then if you watch this now, this lasts for around 1.5 seconds. If I increase the speed to 15, obviously that's going to be much faster. I'm going to leave that at 8, which is an optimal value. The bounce, if I set that to around 2, that just creates a little overshoot. Just like that. Very simple overshoot. Note that this animation in, starts where the layer starts. For example, if I move this layer slightly forward, then the animation starts relative to this point. If I move it even further, the animation will start right here. This is the same for the end, for the out animation. If I cut it at around here, that way it ends around here. The out animation is going to start around here. So what I'm going to do is move over to the out tab, and I'm going to add a couple of out properties. For example, let's add a opacity. So set that to 0, and as you can see, it animates out. I can do a rotation, make that around 45 as well. I can add a position. Maybe let's move this up. And now we get something that looks like that. So we get a very simple start animation and then another different out animation. Now let's talk about managing properties. Let's say I wanted to delete one of these properties. Usually you would have to twirl down once, like this, twirl down another, and then look at the properties and then delete them one by one. And then since we added a effect slider right here, we would also have to delete that one. So instead of doing this, we have devised a simpler solution that is right here. We have these list views that show the different properties for the in and out animations. If I go into the in tab and select, let's say, the position, I can simply click the trash button, and just like that, it'll delete itself from here and here. If we view the animation now, the position property is no longer present. I can do the same for the out animation, select the rotation, and click delete. Now what I'll do is, let's say I wanted to delete everything in this column, everything here, scale and rotation, and if we had more, I want everything to be deleted. just make sure you're on the In tab and click this thing. Just like that, it'll delete itself. I can do the same here and delete. Just like that, I will have a very basic text layer that has nothing except that it's textified, as shown by these three properties. If I want to even get rid of these three properties, it's very simple. Just click this button right here. And that just resets it to a default text layer that has nothing applied to it. In another situation, let's say you just opened a project and you have these two text layers that have been textified and animations have been applied to them. You can see here on this Textify, even though I'm selected this layer, nothing can be seen. There's no properties, even though on the left, as you can see, there's a lot. So what you have to do is click the update button, which is shown right here. Click on it and click on the Out tab, and you see all of the properties are back. This is because After Effects needs you to interact with the script in order for the script to detect that specific layer. If I move to the next layer, you can see I've got a bunch of different properties, got scale out, opacity out, in which these here are different. What I have to do again is update it. And just like that, the corresponding properties will be shown. Now we can just delete it if I wanted to, textify everything, and yeah, that's pretty much what the update button does, and it's very important in the script. Let's say I have this very basic animation of a text that is animated character by character. Animating with Textify is easy. This takes quite a long time, it's around 2 seconds because of how long this text is. Let's say I wanted to animate it word by word rather than character by character. All you have to do is select this based on drop down, make sure that you selected the layer, and click words. Just like that. It's animated word by word. I can also do it line by line, which pretty much does the whole thing at once. If I had multiple lines, this would not be the case. I'm going to switch that back to word by word. This anchor property, what that does is pretty cool. If I select line and watch the animation now, you can see that the scale property is very affected, and it scales from the center rather than from each word. Just like that. If I select it and switch the anchor back to a word, what this does is the center point is at each word rather than each character. If I do it in character, it reverts back to the original, just like that. The direction property is very obvious. As you can see here, it goes from the left to the right. If I select it and click right to left, that animates on the inverse direction. Textify also has a couple of different extra features. If I select this layer, click on Extra, the drop down, you can see I have 4 different types of extra features. Let's start from the bottom down. Shadow. By clicking that, it creates a duplicate of my selected layer, puts it slightly below it, skews it a little bit, blurs it out, and puts an opacity on it. This is meant to represent a shadow. Let's delete that. If I select it again and click Reflection, adjust transition completion to desired appearance. Alright, so as you can see right here, I get a reflected copy. Sometimes the reflection doesn't show through because of different fonts and different text sizes. So to change that, just adjust this. You can see as adjusted, some reveals, some disappears. Usually you want it to be around halfway of the text showing. I can delete that. The next feature is a RGB split. This feature only works when there's a black background and if I click on it, it duplicates my current layer for 3 different channels of colors and creates a null object to control it. So if I adjust the wiggle, you can see I get this very simple effect. This can be helpful for animating specific types of animations. Finally, the last effect. This is called rectangle box. At the moment, I have a very simple animation which is basically just a text animating character by character with a position property. If I select the layer and click rectangular box, it will basically contain the animation in a comp, creating that sort of effect. It basically finds the size of the text, puts it in a new composition, and contains all the animation inside it. The next feature is a randomize function. If I select this layer right now, which is just a basic text layer, and textify it, I can now click random. This will generate a bunch of different properties with a bunch of different and random values. If I was selecting the out tab, if I was on this tab and click random, it'll generate a bunch of random values for the animation out. But because I was in the animation in, it develops a bunch of random animations for the in property. So if we take a look at this animation, it looks like this. Totally random. What's cool is I can just keep clicking the random button, and it will just keep giving me new animations that are just totally random. I can do it again. And just keep experimenting until I find something that I like. This is very good if you are uninspired, if you're not sure what to do. You can always click this to see what you can do with animating. Let's say I have this animation, or actually, let's just generate a new one. Like this. And let's say I wanted it to be the exact same for the animation out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it around here, and I'm going to click the mirror button. What this does is, depending on the currently selected tab you're on, so if you were in the in tab, then I would copy everything here and paste it in the out tab. So if we take a look right now, it enters like so and exits like so, the exact same. Keep in mind that when this is clicked, if I was on the in tab, everything on the out tab will be deleted and then pasted from the in tab. That's how it works. Let's try this again. Let's delete everything. I'm going to untextify the whole thing. Textify it again, randomize it. Let's take a look at the animation. Oops, I randomized the out. Okay, so let's say I randomize the out tab, like so. And I want this to be the exact same for the in tab. So make sure you select it on the out tab and click mirror. Just like that. The exact same values will be copied, and it looks pretty cool. Well, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the script.